This last week we talked about what is public debt. We talk about classification of public debt, funded debt and funded debt, unfunded debt, external debt and internal debt, reproductive debt and debt weight debt. We have talked about that too. We also talk about marketable debt and non-marketable debt. So we talk about sources of internal debt, sources of external debt. So we also talk about factors responsible for accumulation of public debt, which I said, what are the reasons why government incur public debt? So, or objective of public debt. I think we talked about that too last week. So, benefit of public debt, we have talked about that too. Why problem and effect of public debt, we have talked about that too. Problem and effect of public debt, we have talked about that. So where we are going to start today, we are going to start with concept of debt restructuring. Concept of debt restructuring. How do we restructure a debt? Concept of debt restructuring.
I don't have that. Yeah,
So please, let's try and mute your audio. Mute your audio. Please mute your audio. Concept of debt restructuring. That is where we start today. Concept of debt restructuring. Debt restructuring is a mechanism for reducing a country's debt burden through various strategies. Debt restructuring is just a mechanism for reducing a country debt burden through various strategies. Please mute your audio. Mute your audio. Now, what are those various strategies of debt restructuring? One of the strategies of debt restructuring is called debt refinancing. One of the strategies of debt restructuring is called debt refinancing. One of the strategies of debt restructuring is debt refinancing. What is debt refinancing? Debt refinancing is the process of procuring a new loan on a more concessional term to repay an existing loan. What we mean by debt refinancing is you procure a new loan so that you use it to set off an existing loan. The new loan that you procure is on a more concessional term. More than the existing loan. Or the interest rate of the new loan is lower than the interest rate charged by the existing loan. So you can procure a new loan so that you use it to set up the existing loan. Take for instance, you have a loan with First Bank. Government have a loan with a commercial bank going to 1 billion naira. So, but the interest rate charged by the commercial bank is high. Government can look outward by looking outside the country to go and procure a new loan from World Bank or IMF so that they use it to settle up the internal loan. Because the external loan, sometimes the interest rate is normally on a single digit. So they can use that IMF loan to settle the domestic loan, which is the First Bank loan. So that is debt refinancing. Another one is debt rescheduling. What is debt rescheduling? Debt rescheduling simply means the process of changing the maturity structure of a loan. The process of changing the maturity structure of a loan. You are changing the maturity structure of a loan. What we mean by that is maybe you procure a short-time loan, you now reschedule it. You ask your creditors, your lender, to help you reschedule the loan by increasing the repayment period from shorter period to a longer period, or by giving you an amortization period. Do you understand? Initially, when you procure a loan, take for example, initially you procure a loan and you agree that the repayment period is going to be 10 years. You can reschedule it. When you feel that within that 10 years you cannot pay back, you can reschedule the loan by changing the maturity structure from the shorter period to a longer period. To a longer period in a sense that you increase the repayment period for like 20 years. So that what you are going to be paying every year, both principal and interest, will be so low, lean, that will not affect your working capital. Do you understand? So government can reschedule their debt so that what they will be paying every year is going to be lean. It's not going to affect their current operation. It's not going to affect their responsibility of providing social amenities to the people. So you can reschedule a loan. So debt rescheduling is one of the debt strategies. And if you want to reschedule a public debt, there are some principles of debt rescheduling. For you to reschedule a public debt, there are some principles of debt rescheduling. What are those principles of debt rescheduling? Number one, principles of debt rescheduling, principles of imminent default. What does these principles mean? These principles apply to the debtors. It does not really apply to the creditors. You understand? It applies to the debtors. These principles was initiated was the one who used these principles. They are saying that debtors, before you can apply for rescheduling a debt, he must prove that he is unable to service the debt. They must prove that they are unable to service the debt. If a country wants to reschedule a debt that they are owing, their public debt, they must prove to their creditors that based on this current agreement, or based on this agreement we have, that we are going to pay back within 10 years, is showing clearly that we cannot pay back within 10 years. You understand? Because we don't have enough fund. Our revenue is we don't have a sustainable revenue to pay back this debt within 10 years. So there must be a proof that that debtor's nation cannot pay back the loan within the shorter period. They must provide a proof. If they don't provide a proof, they will not accept their debt rescheduling. Do you understand? So imminent default is one of the principles introduced by IMF. One of the reasons why IMF introduced imminent default is to ensure that there is equitable balance of payments. Equitable balance of payment, in a sense that this country so that they will have enough resources to address their balance of payment, to ensure to invest more on exportation, so that they will not be using all their funds to pay debts, so that they will invest more on how to improve on exportation. So that is principles of imminent default. Other principles of debt rescheduling is principles of burden sharing. Principles of burden sharing. What we mean by that is the burden of the debt rescheduling. For you to reschedule the debt, that burden that will arise from rescheduling that debt must be shared fairly and equally by both the debtors nation and the creditors nation. That debt burden of rescheduling that debt must be shared fairly by both the debtors nation and the creditors nation. So that is principles of burden sharing. Another principles of debt rescheduling is principles of conditionality. Principles of conditionality. This one is the golden rule of debt rescheduling. These principles of conditionality is otherwise referred as golden rule of debt rescheduling. So it was also introduced by IMF. Golden rule of debt rescheduling means for a country to reschedule their debts, they must adopt IMF structural adjustment program. Do you understand? For you to say you want to reschedule a debt, you collect a debt from IMF, public debt as a country, and you want to reschedule it. You want to increase the repayment period from shorter period to a longer period. You understand? IMF will give you a template that you need to follow in your country. Such template is called structural adjustment program. I remember a couple of years ago, Nigeria adopted a structural adjustment program. One of the structural adjustment programs, Operation Feed the Nation. You understand? We have another one called Millennium Development Goal. All these are structural adjustment program. So you as a debtors nation, you want to apply for debt rescheduling, you must follow the IMF structural adjustment program. You must follow the IMF structural adjustment program. So we have three principles of debt rescheduling. Principles of imminent default, principles of burden sharing, and principles of conditionality. So, number 3, debt restructuring strategy that we have. We have talked about debt refinancing. We have talked about debt rescheduling. Number 3, debt restructuring strategy that we need to talk about is called debt conversion. It's called what? Debt conversion. What is debt conversion? Debt conversion is a system by which a country with excessive debt exchange part of their debt obligation. Instead, with excessive debt exchange part of their debt obligation. That is called debt conversion. This one simply means system by which you exchange your public debt. When you have an excessive public debt, you are now looking at strategies that you are going to use to reduce that excessive debt. Such kind of strategy that you are using to reduce your excessive debt is called debt conversion. You are exchanging your debt for another valuable consideration. You are exchanging your debt for another valuable consideration. That is debt conversion. What are the forms of debt conversion? What form of debt conversion do we have? We have different forms of debt conversion. We have different forms of debt conversion. One of the forms of debt conversion that we have is called debt for equity conversion. One of the forms of debt conversion that we have is called debt for equity conversion. What is debt for equity conversion? It is the exchange of a country foreign dominated debt for a local currency. The exchange of a country foreign dominated debt for a local currency, which can be used either for establishment of new enterprise or purchase of equity. Debt for equity conversion apply to foreign debt, which is external debt. It applies to external debt. The system in which you exchange your external debt with your local currency. You know, external debt is in foreign currency, dollar, pounds. You now want to exchange that external debt. Government, they obtain external debt of $200 million with World Bank. When they want to pay back, they will be paying back in foreign debt. Do you understand? But the system where they exchange that external debt with local currency, how will they exchange it to local currency? By saying that these our creditors that give us this external debt, they should come and invest in Nigeria. You understand? They should come and establish a company in Nigeria. Or government use the debt to develop a generating project. Maybe that debt is a funded debt. You understand? Revenue generating project. They use it to develop a revenue generating project. They can invite the creditors that instead of us paying you back the debt, come and become an equity holder in this company that we use the money for. Government can procure a debt. They can use it to construct railway system. After finishing construction of the railway system, government can privatize the development of that railway system. Do you understand? Once they privatize it, they will allocate shares or equities to the creditors that give them the loan, so that them too can become the shareholder. Instead of paying back the loan, they have exchanged the loan with equity. In such case, the creditors now have become an equity holder. in that enterprise, in that sectors that government use the public debt for. In debt for equity conversion, the creditors and the debtors nation, they share the risk together. You understand? In debt conversion for equity, debt for equity conversion, there is a risk sharing or spreading of risk. The risk that may be associated from the debt is being shared by both the lender and the borrower. The risk that will be associated from the debt is being shared by both the lender and the what? The borrower. Another name for debt conversion is called debt swap. Another name for debt conversion is called debt swap. You can see it: debt for equity swap, debt for debt swap, debt for cash swap, debt for export swap. So another name for debt conversion is called debt swap. It's called debt for debt. Debt for debt. The foreign for domestic currency donated. Debt for debt conversion means governments, they exchange their foreign debts governments exchange their foreign debts with domestic currency dominated debt. With domestic currency dominated debt, e.g., government debt stock. We can exchange our foreign debt with domestic currency dominated debt. Government can issue out government bonds or development stock or treasury bill. The fund realized from such domestic government security can be used to pay the foreign debt. When government issue out a bond or development stock, any fund that they realize from such bond and development stock, they can use it to pay off what? The foreign debt. That is debt for debt conversion. Government can use that fund realized from their domestic debt, because development stock, treasury bill, bonds, treasury certificate, they are domestic debts procured by government. They will issue it out. The fund that they realize from such domestic debt, they will use it to pay off or to settle off their foreign debt. That is debt for debt conversion. Another one, debt for cash conversion. Debt for cash conversion. Debt for cash conversion. The system in which a country exchange their foreign debt, foreign currency dominated debt, for a local currency. For a local currency. The system in which a country exchange their foreign dominated debt for a local currency. What we mean by debt for cash conversion is when government have enough resources, they have received enough revenue from tax, they have another sources of revenue. Do you understand? That debt that they are owing, they can settle it off immediately with the cash that they're having. They have enough of external reserve. When we have external reserve that we are not using it, we can use it to settle off our debt. That is debt for cash conversion. Since you have collected enough revenue from tax, enough revenue from oil and gas, so you can use that revenue to settle off your debt. Because when you put the revenue in your reserve, it will not be giving you any benefit and you are still having a debt. Instead of you paying more interest, just use it off to settle the debt. That is debt for cash conversion. That is what? Debt for cash conversion. Debt for export conversion. Debt for export conversion is another form of debt conversion. Debt for export conversion is another form of debt conversion. What do we mean by debt for export conversion? Nigeria is blessed with we have enough and excessive natural resources. So we have numerous natural resources. We have oil and gas, we have mineral resources. So all these resources, we can use them to settle off our debt. When we collect a foreign debt, do you understand? We collect a foreign debt. Instead of us paying back the foreign debt in foreign currency, we approach our creditors. Let's pay back with our natural resources. We can be paying back by saying our creditors will be giving you crude oil as a means of paying back this our external debt. You understand? We'll be giving you crude oil by paying you back crude oil, or we'll be giving you gold to pay back this external debt. Is debt for the export conversion. They will be exporting crude oil to the creditor's country as a means of exchange for the debt. Is debt for export conversion. When the system in which you exchange your debt with your country, with the exportation of your country natural resources, the system in which a country exchange their debt obligation with the exportation of their natural resources, such as crude oil, mining, gold, It is called debt for export conversion. It is called debt for export conversion. Objective of debt conversion program. In 1988, Nigeria practiced a debt conversion program. And what are the objectives of debt conversion program? Practice adopted by Nigeria. What are the objectives of debt conversion program adopted by Nigeria in 1988? One of the objectives of debt conversion program is to reduce Nigeria external debt service. To reduce what? Nigeria external debt services or Nigeria external debt service burden. We want to reduce our external debt. We can go into debt conversion program. If we want to reduce our external debt, we can go into what? Debt conversion program. So we can use debt conversion program to reduce our external debt burden. Because external debt, the servicing of external debt is very expensive, is costly because of foreign exchange rates. Look, for example, Nigeria, maybe 10 years ago, they procure $200 million and they will start paying back after 5 years. By the time they started paying back, the rate of exchange of dollar to naira will have increased. So as a result of that, government will pay more. They will pay more when they convert what they are paying to naira. They will pay more compared to what they obtain. So another objective of debt conversion program is to improve economic environment, to improve and make economic environment attractive to foreign investor. What this one means is to attract foreign investors or to encourage foreign investors. Debt conversion program will have direct impact on foreign direct investments. We have direct impact on foreign direct investment. When Nigeria practice debt conversion program, it will attract more foreign investors to come and invest in Nigeria. How? Most of the foreign investors, they can borrow Nigeria government money. A giant company in United States of America can borrow Nigeria government money. Maybe they borrow them $100 million. After borrowing them, Nigeria government can invite them that instead of us paying you back the debt, come and use the debt to invest in Nigeria. We'll give you a land. Part of the debt, you use it to purchase the land. When you started your company, maybe in the next 20 years, you will not be paying tax. The tax that you're supposed to be paying, we are going to use it to offset your debt. We are going to use it as part of to extend the debt that we are owing you. It will attract them to come and invest. More foreign investors will come to Nigeria. Do you understand? Another objective of debt conversion program. Debt conversion programs serve as an additional incentive for repatriation of flight capital. This one, you can change it by saying debt conversion will prevent capital flights. It will prevent what? Capital flight. What we mean by that capital flight prevention simply means in Nigeria circulation, in Nigeria economy, capital fund is not going to be moving out from Nigeria economy when we practice debt conversion program, especially debt for equity, debt for debt, and debt for export. Take for instance, debt for export. Nigeria borrowed $200 million. That $200 million that Nigeria borrowed is still going to be in Nigeria economy. When Nigeria is paying back the debt, they are using their natural resources to pay back. Money is not moving out from the Nigeria economy. Do you understand? So the fund is not moving out from the economy. Do you understand? Because most of these public debts, government, they use public debt to practice what is called capital flight by using it to embezzle money, to move out money from the economy. If government want to embezzle money, they can go and procure debt. When they pay back the debt, they will have some shady business with the creditors. Do you understand? The creditors will be giving the government officials some percentage. So that is what is capital flight. Money will be moving out, fund will be moving out from Nigeria economy. Another objective of debt conversion program is to stimulate employment generating investment. Stimulate employment generating investment in industries. This one simply means debt conversion program will improve employment opportunities. Debt conversion program is going to do what? Improve employment opportunities. There will be more employment opportunities. More people will be employed in the economy when foreign investors come to Nigeria to come and establish a business. More people will be employed. When we started exporting our natural resources, more people will be employed. So debt conversion program will improve employment opportunities. Another objective of debt conversion program is to encourage the creation and development of export-oriented industries. Encourage the creation and development of export-oriented industries. Debt conversion program will create export-oriented industry. It will develop export-oriented. Nigeria will be an exporting country. When we practice debt for exports, we'll be exporting more. And the more we export, is going to have more impact on our balance of payment. We are going to have favorable balance of payment if we export more. Do you understand? Exports, if Nigeria is an export-oriented country, is going to have impact on our GDP. and our balance of payment will improve. So all these are objective of debt conversion program. Problems of debt conversion program. Problems of debt conversion program. One of the problems of debt conversion program is debt conversion program may lead to increase in the rate of inflation. Debt conversion program may lead to increase in the rate of inflation in the country. The rate of inflation in the country, because of debt conversion program, will be increased. The prices of goods and services is going to be increased. Why? Because there is too much of money in the circulation. Money is not moving out from Nigeria economy. We now have too much of money in the circulation. When there is too much of money in the circulation, we are calling for inflation. Inflation. Because the purchasing power of the consumer is going to improve. When the purchasing power of the consumer improves, consumer can buy at any price that the producer is willing to sell. So as a result of that, there will be inflation. Debt conversion program may also lead to round-tripping transaction. Debt conversion program may also lead to what? Round-tripping transaction. What do we mean by round-tripping transaction? We said we want to be paying back our debt with our exports, with exportation of our natural resources. We don't want to be paying back in dollars because of foreign exchange differences. We don't want to be paying back in foreign currency because of what? Foreign exchange differences. Round-tripping transaction simply means when we are exchanging our debt with our exports, in the long run, it may link to round-tripping. Why? Nigeria don't have refinery. We are exchanging our debt with crude oil. Our creditors, they are collecting our crude oil in exchange of our debt obligation as a country. At the end of the day, if our creditors refine that crude oil by deriving PMS and diesel from it, one of the large markets that our creditors can sell that PMS and diesel, that they can import it to, is where? Nigeria. That natural resources that we exchange for them, they will still come back to come and sell the refined products to us. At the end of the day, we are still going to pay back we are still going to buy that refinery, that PMS, diesel, that refinery product. We are still going to buy it with that foreign currency that we want to avoid. In the long run, that is round transaction, backdoor transaction. We are saying we don't want foreign currency. We don't want foreign currency. We don't want differences. We want to reduce negative impact of foreign exchange differences. Let's exchange our debt with our exports, with the exportation of our natural resources. That our natural resources, when the creditors convert it to finished product, we are still going to be the one to buy it from them. That is round-tripping transaction. Another problems of debt conversion program is debt conversion program, there may be fear of foreign domination. in debt conversion program, there may be fear of what? Foreign domination. If care is not taken, our industry may be dominated by foreigners. If government borrowed money by saying, this foreign country that we borrowed money to come and invest in Nigeria, come and own a business in Nigeria, come and establish an enterprise in Nigeria, that enterprise you establish in the next 20 years, the tax you're supposed to pay, you will not pay it. It is from the debt that you are with Nigeria government is owing you, that you pay the tax. More foreigner will dominate Nigeria. They will be the one controlling our economy. They will be the one. Maybe they are in. We tell them to come and establish energy. They will be the one controlling our electricity. We tell them to come and establish a transport industry. They will be the one controlling our transport. Aviation industry. They will be the one controlling our aviation. We tell them to come and invest in oil and gas. They will be the one controlling our oil and gas. So most of our industry, ownership of our industry, will be owned by foreigner. So one of the problem of debt conversion program is there may be foreign domination. Debt conversion program may lead to foreign domination of major industries. Foreigner will dominate all our industries. So that is one of the problems of debt conversion. So let's look at debt management strategies. How do we manage our debt? How do we reduce our debt? Debt management strategies. Debt management simply means a policy measure designed primarily to contain debt ratio, to ensure effective control on the volume of debt. Debt management strategies can be classified into two. Debt management strategies can be classified into two. We have long-term debt management strategy, and we also have short-term debt management strategies. Debt management strategies can be classified into two. We have long-term debt management strategies, and we have short-term debt management strategies. Let's look at long-term debt management strategy. Long-term debt management strategies, there are various economic restructuring and diversification program. Examples of long-term debt management strategies: commercialization. Commercialization simply means that industry that government use debt to establish, that project that government use debt to construct, government commercialize it. Commercialize it in the sense that anybody that want to benefit from such project, anybody that want to benefit from such project is going to pay for it. Example of commercialization: Nigeria borrowed a loan, they procure a foreign loan to construct railways station. After finishing construction of railway station, government commercialize it. Anybody that want to enter train, they will pay. It's not going to be subsidized. Nigeria, they borrow the loan to construct airports, international airports. If you want to enter a plane, you are going to pay the price. Commercialization. Deregulation. One of the means our debt management, one of the reason why we can reduce our debt, because debt management strategy simply means how do we reduce our country debt? By deregulating some sector. Government deregulation simply means government, they will remove their hand, they will not invest in some of the sector again. Example of deregulation, our subsidy, our fuel, PMS, was subsidized before, but now it's now deregulated. People can buy it, the marketer will buy it at the price that they want to, the marketer will sell it at the price based on the price that they buy it. Government is not going to give them incentive again. Our energy sectors now too is deregulated. You are going to pay based on what you are using. It's not that government will be giving the disco some incentive every month for part of the consumption, the masses consume, the citizen consume. No, government is not giving them any money again. Because most of these subsidies that government is paying, sometimes government go and borrow money to pay it. So deregulation is one of the long-term debt management strategy. Liberalizations too is one of the management of debt, long-term debt management strategy. Privatization, some of the industries, some of the companies, enterprise owned by government need to sell it off, privatize it, sell it to private investors, so that they will run it efficiently and effectively. Globalizations too is one of the long-term debt management strategies. Let's look at short-term debt management strategy. Short-term debt management strategy. One of the short-term debt management strategy we have is debt forgiveness. Debt forgiveness, simply called debt pardon. Debt forgiveness, simply called debt pardon. Debt forgiveness arises when the creditor's nation decided to forget or write off the debt of the debtor's nation. Creditors nation, they write off or forget the debt of the debtor's nation. Debtor's nation, they will be the one to appeal to the creditors. Our creditors, so with the way it's going, this debt we are owing you, we don't have capacity to repay back. We don't have capacity to repay back because we are facing a lot of crisis in our country. So please write off this debt to us. Debt forgiveness can be in full or in form of discount. In form of discounts, in the sense that if you are owing $18 billion, they can ask you to come out of this $18 billion, how much are you willing to pay? If you say you can pay like $3 billion, they will collect it from you and write off the $18 billion. So debt conversion program can be in form of full or full write-off of the debt or partial. Full means you don't have any money at all. Let me write off this debt. I don't have any money. This country, this debtor's country, they don't have any money. There are some countries now, IMF, Paris Club, London Club of Creditors, they write off their debt completely. Syria, Iraq, Sudan, all these countries, they are facing a lot of war crisis. So their economy, their GDP is in negative positions. So they don't have economy, the economy is not stable. So they don't have any resources to repay back their debt. As a result of that, for one of the means of supporting them is to write off their debt. In 2006, Paris Club of Creditors grant a debt forgiveness to Nigeria. Nigeria approached Paris Club of Creditors in 2006 to forgive their debt. So that is debt forgiveness. Number two, debt short-term debt management strategy. Number two is debt repudiation. Debt what? Repudiation. Debt repudiation. What is debt repudiation? Debt repudiation simply means a system where countries completely disown or unwilling to pay back their debts. A system where country completely disown or unwilling to pay back their debts. Where a country, a debtor's country, they disown or disagree with their debt, or they are unwilling to pay back the debt. It is called debt repudiation. It is called what? Debt repudiation. When that country, they are unwilling to pay back their debt, they disown it. They don't want to pay back. It is debt repudiation. However, if any country involved in debt repudiation, there may be possibility of sanction by IMF and World Bank. Sanction in the sense that they will put such country in a blacklist. If any country engage in debt repudiation, such country will be put in a blacklist in a sense that such country will not have access to any foreign debt again. Such country will not have access to what? Any foreign debt again. They will not have access to any foreign debt again. So they will not have access to any foreign debt. That is debt repudiation. Give me your power bank. So that is debt repudiation. Another short-term debt management strategy that we have, short-term debt management strategy. Another short-term debt management strategy that we have is called ban on external loan. Ban on external loan. This one is called debt embargo. This one is called what? Debt embargo. What do we mean by debt embargo? Debt embargo simply means ban on external loan. The legislative arms, the National Assembly, they make a law that for like 20 years, in the next 20 years or in the next 10 years, this our country should not obtain, should not engage in external loan, should not go and procure any external loan, no matter the crisis we are facing in our country. The National Assembly, debt embargo simply means the law passed by the National Assembly that for a certain period of time, the country should not procure any external loan. In Nigeria now, our National Assembly, the Senate, they can pass a law that since we have a lot of debt we are servicing, do you understand? And there is something called debt consolidation, consolidated debt limit. Consolidated debt limit simply means the maximum number of debts that a country can get at a time or can be paying. Nigeria, maybe we have reached our consolidated debt limit. Our every country consolidated debt limit depends on their GDP. Our consolidated debt limit can be 15% of our GDP. It means the total value of our country debt, our government debt, shall not be more than 15% of our debt GDP. When we reach our consolidated debt limit, that one means we cannot get, government will not get any debt again, especially external debt. So, National Assembly can pass a law that they place our country on debt embargo by saying we should, in the next 20 years, Nigeria government should not go for any debt, either external or internal. They should not procure any debt as either external or internal, so that we can have time, so that it will give us time to pay the existing one, so that we can have enough fund to pay the existing one. Let's settle the current one that we are paying. Don't let us procure another debt again. So debt embargo simply means a law passed by the National Assembly to restrict a country from obtaining external loan for a particular period of time. It's one of the means of debt management strategy. So all these are the strategies of debt management, short-term strategies of debt management: debt forgiveness, debt repudiation, debt embargo, which is ban on external loan, and economic restructuring program. The next thing we need to look at now is government domestic borrowing instruments. If government want to borrow internal loan, domestic borrowing, internal debt, what are those instruments of internal debt? Instrument of internal debt. Number one instrument of internal debt is Treasury bill. Treasury bill. Treasury bill is a short-time debt that normally issue out by who? Central bank on behalf of government. If federal government want to set a treasury bill, it is the central bank that will issue it out on behalf of federal government. And the maturity structure of treasury bill, it will mature after 90 days. 90 days. It's going to mature after what? 90 days. So treasury bills is normally in thousands. The minimum amount of treasury bill you can subscribe for is 10,000 naira. Treasury bill. Another one, another domestic government security. Another government domestic borrowing instrument. Government domestic borrowing instrument is treasury certificate. Treasury certificate too is issued out by central bank on behalf of federal government, but it has a maturity structure that range from 2 to 3 years, 1 to 2 years. The maturity structure of treasury bill is between 1 to 2 years, minimum of 1 year, maximum of 2 years. So that is treasury certificate. Treasury certificate.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Please, sorry, sir. Please, can you repeat, sir, for the treasury certificate?
For the treasury certificate, it's a government instrument, government security instrument that government sell to people, but it's going to mature between 1 to 2 years. It means after 1 year, anybody that subscribe for treasury certificate, they will pay back, they will pay them back. Assuming you subscribe for treasury certificate, after 1 year, maybe you subscribe for the one of 100,000. After 1 year, government will pay you back both the principal and the interest. After 1 year, government will pay back both the principal and the what? Interest. So please, I don't know somebody that have a laptop that can help me share the material. My laptop is off, the battery is low, so that I can be reading the material and explaining. So somebody can share it so that we can see. Federal government bonds. Federal government what? Bonds. For the federal government bonds, this one is a long-term government security. Federal government bond is a long-term government securities. And these federal government bonds, it has a risk-free debt in a sense that it can be ranged from 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So it is at the end of the year, government will pay back the principal. But for bond, every year, the interest accrued from the bond, anybody that subscribes for federal government bond, government will be paying back, will be paying them the interest. The interest coming from the bond, government will be paying back the interest to them every year. The bondholder, it is after the maturity period, government will pay back the principals. And mind you, bond, you can transfer it, assuming you are the initial subscriber of the bond. If you need money, before the maturity period of the bond, assuming it's 10 years bond, before the maturity structure, you can transfer it to another parties. So that is it on federal government bond. And bond is issued out by Debt Management Office. If government want to issue out a bond, it is DMO that issue out a bond, not central bank. Federal government bond is issued out by DMO, not central bank. The next one we should look at is we have federal government saving bond. It's another bond that is issued out by DMO on behalf of federal government. But it has the following objective. What are the objectives? To deepen the national saving culture. In this federal government saving bonds, every year you are going to be subscribing for the bond. Maybe 1 million every year. Assuming it's 20 years bond. After 20 years, they will pay you back the full amount. So that is it on federal government savings bond. Let's look at government development stock. Let's look at stock. Stock is a long-term government security. It is used to finance a project. If a government want to do a project and they don't have money, they can issue out a stock. This stock is normally issued out by Security and Exchange Commission. This one is normally issued out by who? Security and Exchange Commission through the stock exchange. Company can supply for the government stock. Insurance company, bank. The reason why government issue out a stock is to finance what? A project. Maybe government want to construct a Lagos Calabar Coastal Road. They can issue out a stock through Security and Exchange Commission. People can subscribe for the stock. It can be 30 years stock. It can be 20 years. Every year, government will be paying interest to the subscriber of the stock. After 30 years, if it is 30 years stock, they will now pay back to them the principal. The difference between stock and bond is issued, is a long-time government security, but it is issued out by Debt Management Office. But stock, it is a long-time government securities too. But stock is used to finance a development project. And it is issued out by who? Security and Exchange Commission through stock exchange. And for stock, there are some specific investors that government will invite to come and subscribe for government stock. It is not for general public. But bond, anybody can subscribe for government bond if you have the money. But for stock, government will limit it to some people, some category of investors. That is for stock. Aside that, we have another one called Government Solvency Sukuk Bond. Government what? Solvency Sukuk Bond. This one too is a government bond, but we call it Sukuk bond in a sense that because it is established for the purpose of Islamic financing, Islamic investments. You know, in our Muslims, according to our religion, interest is haram, is against the will of Allah. Interest is called, is not allowed in Islam. So government now say, how can we attract some Muslim? They don't want to subscribe for government bonds. They don't want to subscribe for treasury bill. They don't want to subscribe for treasury certificates. They don't want to subscribe for development stock because they believe that the reward of it is interest. And anything interest is against Islamic religion. According to Islam, riba is against Islamic religion. Government say Allah say you should abstain for riba, which is interest. So to attract those category of people, they now establish what is called Sukuk bond. In this Sukuk bond, government will issue out a bond. The bond subscriber, they will be regarded as a shareholder. If government issue out a bond, a Sukuk bond, that project that government use that Sukuk bond to do, anybody that subscribe for that project, they are called the shareholder. Do you understand? At the end of the year, any proceed that government see realized from that project is going to be shared among the shareholder. In Sukuk bond, the subscriber will be collecting dividend, profit sharing. They will not be collecting interest. Please, let's go back to Sukuk bond. Let me switch back to Sukuk bond. Sukuk bond. So, for this Sukuk bond, anybody that subscribe for it, they will be collecting profit sharing. If government use the bond to construct a road, government can toll the road. Any profit that government see from the toll gate, they will share it to the subscriber in form of dividend, not interest. So Sukuk bond is an Islamic financing arrangement which government used to issue out a bond that will not attract interest. The bond holder, they will not collect interest. They will be collecting dividend or profit sharing. So that is it on Sukuk bond. Let's move to another securities. Let's move, let me throw up. We have another one called General Obligation Bond. General Obligation Bond. This General Obligation Bond, government issue out a bond to construct a non-revenue generating project. Government, they issue out a bond to construct what? A non-revenue generating project. Government issue out a bond to construct school, to construct prisons, to construct bridge. Such project cannot give a revenue. At the end of the day, if government want to pay back the principals of the bond and the interest to the subscriber, they will be paying me back from collection of taxes from the citizen or from the other source of revenue, source of income. General obligation bond is a bond that does not generate revenue to the government. Government use it to finance a project that does not generate revenue to the government. If government want to pay back the bond, they will pay it back from collection of taxes and other sources of revenue. We have revenue bond. Revenue bond simply means government issue out a bond to develop a revenue generating project, a project that will generate revenue. It is from the proceeds of the revenue generating project that government will pay back the principals and interest arising from the bond. It is from the proceeds of the revenue generating project that government will pay back the principals and the interest arising from the bond. So that is revenue bond. So let's scroll down. We have requirement for revenue bond. Now, let's look at this documentation for state borrowing. Documentation for state borrowing. Let's go to documentation for state borrowing. If a state government want to borrow, documentation for state government debt instrument. If a state government want to borrow money, what are those documentation? What are those requirements for state government borrowing? One of the documentation for state government borrowing is profile of the states showing population, major industry and their location, and other projects embarked upon by the state. One of the documentation for state government borrowing is for the state to provide their profile. Their profile must show the population of the state. Example, Lagos State. The population of Lagos State, for example, maybe is 50 million. One of the major industry in Lagos State is Dangote Refinery, flour mill. One of the major projects embarked upon by Lagos State is construction of monorails, construction of BRT terminal. Other project that Lagos State is proposing to do is construction of Fort Milan Bridge. All these are what? Profile of the state. All these are what? Profile of the state. Number 2, documentation or requirement of state government debt instruments. You may be asked, what are the requirements for state government debt instruments? It's the same thing as documentation for state government debt instruments. Number 2 is profile of asset and liability of the state. in the last 5 years? What are the assets owned by state government? What are the assets owned by Lagos State government in the last 5 years? What are those assets of Lagos State government? What are their buildings? What are their cars? Their assets in the last 5 years. Liability. What other loan does the government have? The state government have? What other loan? What other loan does the state government have in the last 5 years? Liability. Okay, somebody has helped me to share it. So let's go to the requirement for state government debt instrument. Scroll down to the requirement of state government debt instrument. Another one, requirement for state government, sources of revenue of the state for the past 5 years. Sources of revenue of the state for the what? Past 5 years. Another requirement is the law of the state authorizing the state or agency to borrow from the capital market. This one means the State House of Assembly approval. If a governor wants to borrow, the State House of Assembly must approve it. Without approval of the State House of Assembly, a governor cannot go and borrow money. Number 5, feasibility study of the project to be financed by the state. While number 6 is evidence of federal government guarantee. Evidence of what? Federal government guarantee. What we mean by that is, if a state government wants to borrow, especially if a state government wants to borrow external loan, federal government must guarantee them. Without federal government guarantee, the lender cannot give a state government a loan, because a state government is under federal government. Federal government must guarantee the state that they are aware that this state want to borrow money, most especially external loan. So evidence of federal government guarantee is very key in a requirement of state government borrowing. Even internal loan, if some bank want to borrow a state government money, they will ask the state government to go and provide evidence for what? Federal government guarantee. The last requirement is letter of authority from the state government authorizing the or Accountant General of the Federation to permit direct deduction of both principals and interest from what? Statutory allocation in the case of default. Let me explain this. Federal government normally pays state every month statutory allocation coming from federation account. Do you understand? If a state government borrowed money, federal government will ask them that write a letter of authority. If you fail, if a state fail to pay back any loan that they borrowed, federal government will deduct the loan from their share of statutory allocation. They will pay it to the creditors. It is after paying it to the creditors that the balance will be paid to the states. So, letter of authorities is very important. Let's look at problems faced by the states in financing a project in the capital market. Problem faced by the states in financing a project in the capital market. Number 1 problem faced by the states is poor accounting system on the part of the state. Most of the states, they don't have a good accounting system. They don't have a good accounting system. They don't have a good accounting system. Because if states want to borrow in capital markets, capital market will be reporting, they will be requesting for a lot of financial projection, a feasibility study report, a different account, they will be requesting for audited accounts. And most of the states, they may not have such kind of reports. So, poor accounting system. Inadequate qualified personnel also affect the states. Poor performance too also affect the states. So all these are problems faced by the states in financing a project through the capital market. Now, let's look at debt management office. Debt management office. Let's look at debt management office. Debt management office. This debt management office, they are agencies established by the federal government. And they established them in which year? In year 2000. They established them in the year 2000. They established them in the year 2000. Why do we establish debt management office? We established debt management office in Nigeria in the year 2000 to coordinate and manage our public debt. Government established debt management office to coordinate and manage Nigeria public debt. To coordinate and manage what? Nigeria public debt. They will coordinate and manage Nigeria public debt. They will be the one to have the database of Nigeria debt. Now, let's look at power of debt management office. What power does debt management office have? Number one power is to issue and manage federal government loan. They are the ones that issued and manage what? Federal government loan. That is number one power of debt management office. Number two, to issue guidelines for smooth operation of debt conversion program of the federal government. They issue out a guideline for smooth operation of debt conversion program of the federal government. They also perform any other function that may be ascribed to them by the federal government. Those are the power. Now, let's look at their function. The important thing that we need to know in debt management office, what are the functions of debt management office? At least we must know 7 functions of debt management office. 7 functions of debt management office. Function of debt management office. Maintenance of reliable database of all loans taken by the federal or state government. They maintain the database of all loans taken by what? Federal government and the state government. They are the ones that have the database. If we want to know the total loan profile of Lagos State, we want to know all the loan obtained by Lagos State, who is going to give us the record? Debt management office. Debt Management Office, their office is located in Abuja. They have the database of all the federal government loan and the state government loan. You want to borrow a state government money, you want to do a background check about that state government to look at their debt profile, you are going to approach the office of what? Debt Management Office. They are the one that will give you the database of that state government loan. Another function, they prepare and submit federal government loan forecast and loan service obligation for each financial year. They are the one that will forecast that federal government, this is the projection of loan that we are going to obtain in this year, and this is how we are going to service our existing loan. This is the projection of how we are going to pay our debt service in this next fiscal year. It is the function of Debt Management Office. They also verify and service external debt guarantee. They verify and service external debt guarantee. Debt Management Office also sets guidelines for management of federal government financial risk and currency exposure in respect to all loans. They set guidelines for managing federal government financial risk and currency exposure with respect to all loans. Let me scroll up. Let's look at other functions. They advise federal government on loan restructuring and refinancing of all debt obligation. Debt Management Office also advise federal government on loan restructuring and refinancing all debt obligation. That is another function of Debt Management Office. They also submit to the federal government annual budget forecast. They submit to the federal government annual budgets as regards to foreign loan. They submit to federal government annual budgets as regards to what? Foreign loan forecast and foreign currency. Let's look at other function. Let's look at other function because of time. You can scroll down. They establish and maintain relationship with international and local financial institutions. They establish and maintain relationship with international and local financial institutions. They also administer debt conversion program of different. They administer debt conversion program of the federal government. All these are what? Function of Debt Management Office. Please, in this topic, public debt and debt management, let's know at least 7 functions of debt management office. If you study the past question very well, every diet question on public debt normally come out. Virtually every diet question on public debt normally come out. So please, let's pay more attention to this topic called public debt and debt management. Now, indicator of external debt burden. How do we measure external debt burden? How do we mention our external debt burden? What are the indicators of external debt burden? External debt burden. Let me slow down. Indicators of external debt burden. How do we mention our external debt burden? Scroll down. You can see scroll down. I want to look at indicators of external debt burden. We are talking of external debt ratio. How do we measure our external debt? Number one measurement of our external debt is external debt service to export ratio. Our external debt service to export ratio. We measure our external debt service to export ratio. Another one, external debt stock to export ratio. External debt stock to export ratio. Another one, you can scroll down. You can see scroll down. External debt stock to nominal gross domestic ratio, domestic product ratio. And we have external debt service to nominal gross domestic product. So our external debt burden can be measured in 4 ways. We can measure our external debt burden in 4 ways. It's either we mention our external debt service to export ratio, external debt stock to export ratio, external debt service to gross domestic product ratio, external debt stock to gross domestic product ratio. That is how we measured our external debt. That is how we measured our external debt. So crowding out effect, crowding in effect. I explained this last week. Crowding out effects, crowding in effect and crowding out effect. What is crowding in effect? Crowding in effect means policy that government implements to improve, to attract private sector. All those policies that government will implement that will be beneficiary to the private sector, that will make private sectors to still continue in business. Do you understand? That will attract foreign investors, that will attract local investors, that will encourage private sectors. All those policies that government implements so that private sector will still continue in business. It is what? Crowding in effect. Examples of crowding in effect. Fiscal policy. There are some fiscal policy that measures that government can implement that will encourage private sectors. Example, subsidy. If government gives subsidy, to diesel. Most of the company that is folding up now because of high price of diesel, they will still be in business. They will still continue to run their operations. It is crowding in effect. Fiscal policy. We attract private investment. Government fiscal policy measure may attract private investment. If government reduce taxes, they give tax incentive, it will attract private investment. Private investment will still be in business. It is crowding in effect. So crowding in effect simply means all those policies, measures put in place by government to increase foreign investments and local investment, and to encourage private sectors, private enterprise to still continue in business. That is crowding in effect. Crowding out effect means when government deprive private sector an opportunity, benefit. When government deprive them the benefit, go to crowding out effect. Let's go to crowding out effect. Government, crowding out effect simply means government, they are depriving, they are introducing a measure that will discourage private sectors. When government introduce a measure that will discourage what? Private sector, that will have negative effect on private sector, it is crowding out effect. In a sense that private sector, they will be relocating from Nigeria to other countries. Example, public debt, internal public debt. Government, instead of government to go and be borrowing money externally, government is now borrowing money internally. Money that commercial bank supposed to be giving to private company, they are now giving it to government. They are now borrowing government. It will discourage private sector. Government will not have private sector will not have access to borrow money to do business because government have already borrowed all the money. That is crowding out effect. They are discouraging private sectors. They are discouraging what? Private sectors. They are discouraging private investment. That is what we need to say on crowding out effect. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is all what we need to say on public debt and debt management. I will just summarize again. I will summarize this topic again. In this topic, we talk about public debt and debt management. We talk about public debt. Public debt simply means total government borrowing within and outside the country. Total government borrowing within and outside the country over a particular period of time is called what? Public debt. And we look at classification of public debt. Under the classification of public debt, we talk about marketable debt and what? Non-marketable debt. We said marketable debt are those debts that can be traded in the financial market, e.g., treasury bill, treasury certificate, development stock. They are marketable debt. But non-marketable debt, they are short-term debt that are issued in favor of specific debt holder. That means such kind of debt cannot be traded in the financial market. We talk about that too. Under classification of debt too, we talk about external debt and internal debt. Internal debt and external debt. Internal debt is a domestic debt. Total government borrowing within a country is internal debt. While total government borrowing outside the country is external debt. And we talk about sources of external debt. Sources of external debt: London Club of Creditors, Paris Club of Creditors, multilateral creditors, IMF, such as IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, private sector creditors. All these are sources of external debt. Aside from external debt and internal debt, another classification that we look at is we look at reproductive debt, and deadweight debt. We said reproductive debt is a government debt that is used to finance a project that will generate revenue. A project that will generate revenue. Why deadweight debt is a government debt that is used to finance a project that does not generate revenue. Example, when government collect a debt, they use it to finance insurgency war, or they use it to finance epidemic disease, is deadweight debt. Aside that, we look at factor responsible for accumulation of public debt, which is objective of public debt or reason for public debt. Factor responsible for accumulation of public debt is otherwise called objective of public debt or reason for public debt. We look at that. One of the factors is persistent increase in population. As our population is increasing, the need of the citizen will increase. As a result of that, government will borrow money to provide more needs to the citizen. Government will borrow money to construct more schools. Government will borrow money to construct more hospitals. So persistent increase in population is one of the factors responsible for accumulation of public debt. So we look at that too. We also look at benefit of public debt. Under the benefit of public debt, which is positive impact of public debt, what benefit does public debt result into? Public debt will attract foreign investment. It will improve employment opportunity. We talk about that too. We look at problem of public debt. What are the problems we encounter from public debt? We talk about that too. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's try and read more on this public debt. This my notes I sent to you. You can summarize it. You can summarize it. Every diet question normally come on public debt. They will not mention it as public debt sometimes. They will call it government borrowing, or they will call it government expenditures. They are still referring as to what? Public debt. So this is all what we need to say on public debt. Our next lecture, we have a question on public debt. It's a calculation question. Our next lecture, we will solve question on local government accounting. We also solve this question on public debt, and we are going to move to transcript. So any question, any query, any observation?
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for the lecture, sir. I have a question. There was a material that was shared, public finance officers. I'm not sure if we have created the
public finance officer is going to be taken by Mr. Wasiu Yusuf. I'm not the one taking it. He will take you this. He's going to take you today.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So, you know, you have to this class. Another class is still to hold by 8:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, any other question? Any other question? So in the
Yes,
absence
sir,
of
Idris. Good morning, sir.
yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
I can
Hello,
hear you.
sir.
Hello.
Okay.
I
You
can hear
said
you.
it will. Hello, sir.
Hello, I can hear you.
Okay, when you were discussing one of the bonds, you said it's 90 days, but in the notes you gave
More
us,
than
I saw
90 days.
21 days.
More than 90 days. More than 90
Okay,
days.
sir. Okay,
I
sir.
did not say 90 days.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
Yes, sir, Idris, sorry. I wondered what happened. I was in the classroom and I couldn't, there was nothing happening. It was responding that the host was in a different meeting, and I
Oh,
lost
what
whatever
happened is the link that was shared to you is for the 2 period of PSAP. One is holding 8 a.m., which I'm the one taking that. Why the second one we hold 8:30 p.m. is the second one you log into, not the first one. They share the 2 links together. You will have checked, is it 8:30 a.m. or 8? Is it 8 a.m. or 8:30 p.m.? Do you understand?
Timing
But I will
difference.
talk to the admin that
difference.
maybe he should share the first one first. After we finish the first one, he can share the second one so that students will not be confused.
It's all
Any
right, sir.
other
Thank you very
question?
much.
Yeah, thank you very much. So far for this diet, we have discussed introduction of public sector accounting. We have discussed local government accounting. We have discussed public debt. Local government accounting and public debt is a must. We must be watchful of those 2 topics in this diet, especially local government accounting. Please, my note on local government accounting, try and read it. Function of local government, sources of local government, internal control of local government, challenges of local government. The question on local government, by God's grace, I will solve it next week. And we have a small question on public debt too. I will solve it before we move to transcript. Local government accounting and public debt, they are 2 important topics to us in this diet, especially local government accounting. If you have been reviewing past questions, every diet question on public debt normally come out.